Steve Quinn is joining me from Glasgow, Scotland, where he works as an executive coach around personal and organizational change issues. Steve is also a practitioner in logosynthesis, and he's going to share some insights and his expertise about using logosynthesis to support leaders. So thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm curious to start how you were introduced to logosynthesis and what attracted you to train in this model.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a coach in, I think it was the autumn of 2017, a Swiss coach. We were at a kind of development experience in Italy, and we were just comparing notes. What does a coach do in the UK and what does a coach do in Switzerland? And one of the key differences was she said, I'm using logosynthesis. And I said, I've never heard of it. What is it? Um, and so she started to explain, and she said, "Look, really, pick up, some of the books. You can self-coach, go and explore it. But as a coach, I think you'll find it valuable." So that was really the starting point. So I got a couple of Willem Lammers' books and started to read those, and started to do some self-coaching, and I had one or two curious clients and family members, and they were kind of like, oh, that's interesting. Can we just have a play with that? So that was kind of how it started. And then the more I kind of went into it, the more I realized that it wasn't just about reading the books. There was other stuff to do. Some training would be useful. So I signed up for the basic on the basis that that would be a good starting point, and probably would be all I need. And
Little
um,
did you know.
absolutely. And I suppose I was thinking of it as this will be another tool in my toolbox. And it kind of fitted. I'd done a lot of work in the late 90s with Bill Bridges' transition processes, and had trained in the US and so on with him and with one of his colleagues. And Bridges has this view of change and transition is the internal adjustment process. And the first stage of that in his model is letting go. It's about endings.
Okay.
And he had some interesting tools, but I didn't really find, for this most difficult stage of letting go, as the beginnings of a change process for the individual, I didn't find very effective tools with his work. So I was conscious of that, but I was happy to explore further. Came across the work of a guy called Lester Levinson, who whose work has been kind of taken forwards and is badged as Sedona, like the place in the US. Sedona is in
Yeah.
Arizona or somewhere.
Yeah.
And this was another piece of the jigsaw that added to Bill Bridges' transition work, seemed to be more complete. Not perfect, but more complete, because in a very simple process, it helped people to let go of whatever was holding them back. So that was the kind of a context for my work, about individuals and teams and organizations, and how they deal with change, how they respond to change. And when I began to explore logosynthesis, I thought, oh, this is another dimension. So I need to go in further to that. So that was the kind of the initial draw into to take the basic training. And as you say, little did I know, it kind of draws you in much further.
Yes, when
And
I first
that's,
met Willem, I said, "Oh, I am intrigued by this work." And he said, "Well, the more you
uh-huh,
learn, Cathy, the more intrigued you will be."
yeah,
And that holds true to this day. I'm certainly
uh-huh,
still intrigued
uh-huh,
by it.
yeah, yeah,
So, can you describe the focus of your work with logosynthesis, how you use it in your
yeah.
work?
So all my work is corporate, apart from a little bit of stuff that I do with family members who want to use logosynthesis, but all of my work is corporate. So that's my playpen. And I guess the kind of issues that come up in that world are about they're about individuals and change and organization demands and all of that. So the range of issues that come up are, from somebody stepping up to a new role and not having had the perspective of what's required at a more senior level or in a new organization, and some of the challenges that can bring. I guess a regular focus for me are the high performers who don't have a pause button. So they're the burnout candidates, and often are on the verge of burnout when they kind of ask for help.
And if they don't burn out themselves, they're going to burn everyone else out, and they're right.
Absolutely. If they're running an organization, they're probably burning out their people too. So, that kind of range of issues. Some of my work is with talent possibilities, people that are regarded as potentially high achievers for the future, but at an early stage of their career, and it's kind of supporting them to think about career direction and where they're going and so on. And what would be another example? Well, I suppose externally driven change, where people are just having to change. Pandemic, a wonderful example of that, where all the rules are broken, everything has to be done differently, and yet needs to continue in a sense. So my work in logosynthesis is woven through that kind of range of issues, and I don't use it with every client. For me, I think there's something about the relationship we have and whether that's a dimension, a depth that they want to go to. I think there's also a readiness with clients to be up for exploring areas that are kind of unfamiliar, perhaps feeling kind of personal, more personal than they would normally deal with in the organizational context. So it's kind of my work weaves around all of those kinds of things. I used to do a lot of work with senior teams and around organizational change, but I'm now virtually all of my work is focused on one-to-one work, and that's good. That works for me. So, what would a typical client would be? Someone where I have a good relationship, an established relationship, working around whatever their stuff is, and something will come up where I'll see an opportunity to say, I think I have a process that I've been working with that might be appropriate for that if you wanted to explore that. So very much, kind of a gentle here, without explaining what it is, just that I have a process. And if the relationship's good and their trust levels are good and they're perhaps a little bit of the explorer, then they'll say, yeah, that sounds really interesting. And I would just give them an example of I wouldn't talk about essence or the kind of energy metaphor that we use at that stage, but I would say something like, how you're in a situation and you have a kind of a flashback, a memory, or you re-experience something, or it might be a piece of music, or an old photograph, or a letter you come across in a drawer, and you're kind of flipped back to that place where you're experiencing what you experienced at that time when that photograph was taken, that letter was written. And I've found that invariably people will, get that totally. I say, well, I have a simple process that if that's a troubling reflection back, I have a simple process that might help to ease that if you're interested in exploring it. And I don't do much more explanation than that. I just take them through the process.
Yeah.
And if they're curious, I'll say I'll explain more about the process afterwards. But I don't want us to get bogged down in a debate about what it is.
Yeah. Well, and you make a really good point, because for some people, the idea, like we talk a lot about resolving triggers for our reactions,
Hmm.
and even if we talk about our reactive behavior, those are patterns that we've built up over the years that are part of who we
Yeah,
are. So just the
absolutely.
idea of resolving it is, can be confrontational. Why do I have to fix
Mm.
that? It's not my issue, it's somebody else's issue. So for
Yeah.
some people, when we start talking about resolving triggers using three structured sentences, it sounds a little bizarre or even quacky, right?
Yeah.
And they get their
Yeah.
defenses. But yet when you think about it, the idea that you can resolve these long-standing painful memories, limiting beliefs, fantasies about what might happen, when you
Hmm.
think that you can resolve those using three structured sentences, that is profound. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
is kind of societally, how do we think about our behavior and
Hmm.
how we have to change our behavior? And this is a bit of a paradigm shift to say, you know, it,
Yeah.
it's triggered
Yeah.
by these old memories, these old beliefs that
Hmm.
are no longer
Hmm.
serving us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's a kind of cultural context in the UK where we're not really into kind of counselling and therapy in a big way. Usually, people view that as a kind of indication of uh, mental ill health,
Right.
or something's pretty fundamentally wrong. So um, yeah, so there's that kind of cultural limitation on introducing this and exploring this that I think is best done by taking them through a painless process that's quite quick and delivers up some results and that's usually what happens, that doesn't lead them to go into some sort of existential discovery or explanation or argument about what's going on.
Yeah, and when
People are
they
happy
notice
with the
that the issue is
results.
gone, it's like, "Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, that issue
Yeah.
isn't there anymore." That's
Uh-huh.
quite freeing, right? And quite
Yeah.
liberating. And a
Yeah.
lot of times, like, you probably deal with people that have had 360 feedbacks that
Hmm.
may have heard some pretty harsh commentary about their performance. They may
Hmm.
not believe that what they have done is anything wrong, yet there's a perception out there that kind of
Yeah.
clashes with their belief about who they are. And, in some cases, doing that work is a matter of keeping their job, which they
Hmm.
ultimately
Hmm.
is their goal. And
Yeah.
so, when you can, and I agree with you, you need that working relationship to be able to hold that space for them, because
Hmm.
that's not always an easy thing to do. But from a lot of what I've seen on 360s is people that have had the 360, when you're starting to talk about personality issues and things along that line, they don't have a way to
Yeah.
resolve those behaviors. And
Yeah.
so, then by default, you automatically just kind of put it back on the other person. That's just them. It's not me, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Do you
And
work with
and
360 feedback?
yeah, yeah, a little bit. I think properly handled and properly set up, it can be very powerful. It partly depends on the context for using it and why it's being used. I guess in many there's a mix of things. From we're doing a development program with people, leadership program. Part of that is you get some 360 feedback. That's good as long as that's well implemented and well supported, so that people can make sense of what they're hearing and what they might do about it. That latter piece isn't always in place, so people get feedback, but they're not quite sure what to do with it. It's not a great place to be. But the other thing that sometimes happens is that it's used to confront issues that are problems that the manager should really raise and begin to deal with. But 360 is used as a tool to show people how they're not on the right track, um, and that's just doomed doomed not to succeed. Um,
Yes.
so yeah, it's I guess the other context that this comes up. when Willem's doing his work, he'll say there's really only two questions that matter. The two big questions are, why are you here? What's your mission in this life, and what's stopping you? And I guess I periodically work with people who haven't really thought about what they're here to do, about how what they're doing now leads to somewhere that that they want to go to. And so, I mean, sometimes that's one of these showstopper questions. What is it you're here to do? People just haven't thought at that kind of level before. And what's stopping you is rich kind of. Those are both rich areas for using logosynthesis. So I've begun to use those as a way of helping through that kind of self-appraisal and beginning to think about removing barriers and how to move forward. So very
Yeah,
much the kind of coaching model of where are you now and where are you going to kind of thing.
yeah, because a lot of times the barriers that we think are holding us back from what we want to do
Uh-huh.
are a little bit in, our belief structure, in our
Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah.
So when you
Yeah.
resolve those limiting beliefs, then all of a sudden it kind of opens up potential, because it's like, oh
Mm.
well, I guess
Mm.
that isn't really what's holding
Mm-hmm.
me back from where I want to go.
Yeah.
And
And for many people, those beliefs are submerged. They're not out here, obvious. They're quite deeply submerged in some cases, but driving all sorts of behaviors and actions and so on. So helping to kind of tease those out and unearth those can give a sense of somewhere productive, more productive to go. And I think kind of heads off this question that I think we're too busy in our 20s and 30s and maybe into our 40s, but when we get to that kind of a midlife point, we start to think, okay, so we've done all the things that we're meant to do, got educated and got a job and managed a career and so on, and got the things that demonstrate that success, whatever that whether it's house or car or multiple wives or children or whatever. And the question that comes up, I think, often um, not far below the surface is, is this it? And of course,
right,
that's the stepping stone to the mission question. Well, why are you here?
yes,
Because if you reach the is this it question, is this all there is?
yeah.
All the material stuff, then that's a great launch pad to say, well, what else could there be? What else are you missing? Do you want to
And one of
explore
the
that?
things that I really like about logosynthesis is that it does things in layers. So you start to
Mm-hmm.
peel away the layers. And we usually start when we're asking those questions, you know, what's the most distressing, or what do you perceive to be the biggest block? And so as you start, over time, and especially in a coaching relationship, you start,
Mm-hmm.
with what's the biggest block, and where are you stuck might be another question, right? And so if you start
Mm-hmm.
to resolve those pieces, then that opens up a sense of freedom, or it's quite liberating. And yes, there
Yeah.
are challenges, there's always challenges, but we use how we react to those challenges as
Mm-hmm.
information to kind of get at the underlying triggers again. And so each time it's another slice, and then over time people notice that they're feeling better, and that they're feeling more engaged, and that those big anchors aren't really feeling quite as much of an anchor, or the things that are
Yeah.
so uncertain in their lives don't feel as uncertain. And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the salami slicing or the layers of the onion are important metaphors for people to understand that you don't just do three sentences and your whole world is resolved to somewhere magical. When you resolve one layer, it's likely that something else will crop up that you're now ready to resolve. And once people get that, and you start to, I mean, occasionally I'll backtrack with clients and just as a kind of sense check for me about has that thing gone away that we dealt with 2 sessions ago? And quite often they'll say, that just don't me. Now that's, not part of my thinking. It doesn't influence me or whatever. But this has come up, and can we talk about that? So
Well, and if you think about it in a corporate context, like I know for years we would go and we'd have our weekly meetings, and you sit in the weekly meeting, and we tend to have the same discussions over and over again because
yeah,
it's those patterns, and that's one of the things that we pay attention to
mm,
with logosynthesis, or what are our
hmm
patterns of reaction. And so
hmm
sometimes we're in those meetings, and it's okay, we know exactly who's going to make what comments, and we know
mm,
exactly where our meeting's going to get
mm,
derailed. and
hmm
and you can kind of play out the whole meeting, but as you start to say, okay, let's notice how we're reacting, and we can all do our own work, I think then there's great opportunity to kind of get beyond that, and so that you
yeah,
can start to,
yeah.
yeah, open up that creative space.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. I think an important part for me of working with logosynthesis has been the self work that I've been doing, the self coaching.
Yes.
Um, and when I think back, I had an easy childhood of straightforward upbringing and so on. I mean, minimal challenges, but no trauma that I can think of, except the self imposed stuff. The usual kids stuff, breaking legs and things like that. Um, but I found so I found that the more I did, the more I uncovered that actually was kind of problematic. Or at some level troublesome. And that was really useful to do that work because that's what I was endeavoring to do with clients. And so, doing my own work, my homework, as it were, was that was a really important development experience for me, and certainly influenced how I work with clients and how I'll raise issues and what my expectations of them will be. And I think that was what you alluded to right at the start of this conversation when I said, "Yeah, I'll just do the basic and that'll be me." And you said, "Oh, well, there'll be more to come."
Well, and it's such a big piece of Willem's work, right? Is
hmm
that we all do our personal work, and every year they
Yeah.
hold the Logosynthesis Summer Academy, which is geared
hmm
just to people doing their personal work. And
Yeah.
I think what I really like about the work is that it is a human condition. We all experience traumas. We all have, the beliefs of our family, the beliefs of
Mm.
our personal experiences, and it's not that our beliefs are right and wrong. It's not that those experiences are right and wrong. It's that we freeze our energy in these memories
Mm.
and beliefs, and over time, it no longer serves us. And I'm a little bit
Indeed.
like you. I've never associated with trauma in any of my experiences, but I grew up on a busy dairy farm and Dutch
hmm
immigrants, and
hmm
so it was all about work hard and hurry up and get things done, and
Yeah.
then move that into a corporate environment. And
hmm
it served me
hmm
very well in a lot of ways because you're hardworking, you're successful,
Sure.
you can get a job done, which is really beneficial to
Yep.
advance in an
hmm
organization, and to
hmm
contribute to a team. But then, especially when there's a lot of change, so I worked with craft, and there was a lot of Heinz bought craft, and there was a lot of change and uncertainty, a lot of job
hmm
layoffs, a lot of new roles. And then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, well, this is going into overdrive, which you alluded to, right? Like once you get,
hmm
and things start to break down, and it's how you respond to other people that
Yeah.
can get in the way of having those adult conversations, right? Like we
hmm
go right
hmm
back to where we were when we were kids, and hurry up and get it done, kind of thing, right?
Aha. Aha.
Yeah. And we
Aha.
don't notice it.
No, no, indeed. No, I think that's right. Have you noticed the pandemic has caused shifts in clients in terms of what they want to work on, or how they're responding to the kind of pressures they're under, or not in some cases?
Yeah. And what I notice is everybody's responding to it so differently based on their
Mm,
kind of
hmm
individual styles, right? Like some people are kind of enjoying the quiet,
Yeah.
and then other people
Yeah.
are freaking out over the quiet. There's some people
Uh-huh.
that aren't safe in their home, so then how does that come show up at
Yeah.
work? And
Yeah.
even the work from home, everybody's looking for an answer which is best, but it
Mm-hmm.
depends. I think what we're starting to realize is it depends so much on personal situations, right? So
Mm. Mm.
some people perform better at home, some people
Yeah.
don't. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And organizations are less good at managing that complexity, aren't they? It's easier if it's kind of routinized, or everyone
yeah.
follows a similar pattern, because it seems like it's easier to organize, but it might not work for everyone.
And a lot of large corporations, our whole structure is bound by kind of the policies and procedures, right? And that's how we
Sure.
kind of get those
Sure.
rules, and that helps to kind of frame up the boundaries, but it doesn't
Hmm.
really allow for that personal experience in there, I think.
Yeah.
Eh?
Yeah.
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 So, one of the other things was, and we might see it now more because of the pandemic, that things are urgent and important. And it
Hmm.
kind of makes me
Hmm.
think of the Eisenhower matrix relating to
Hmm.
urgent and important tasks. Um,
Hmm.
do you use that at all with kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
relating?
I do, routinely, I would say. I mean, I don't have a kind of a set piece approach to coaching. I tend to draw from, the range of things I have available
Right.
and experiences I have to offer something that's unique to that individual and their set of circumstances. So when people say, "What do you do?" My answer is always, "Well, it depends."
Right.
But the urgent important one comes up often, I think, and quite often I think it's in situations where people are overwhelmed. They've either got 1,000 emails that they haven't responded to, or a big long project list, or a task list of 100 things that they need to get done, but they never complete their task list. They feel frustration and stress from not being able to be organized, and just putting things in the different boxes in terms of where people spend their time can help them to see um, how life could be different. So I've got a person I'm working with just now. She's stepping up from a kind of operational role, kind of firefighting role, where her daily job is to manage a team and put fires out. And she's stepping up to a role where actually she's meant to have some perspective on, you know, uh, further than today or this week, thinking about next year, thinking about the future shape of the organization, and so on. And it's easy to have things in the wrong box and not take not take the time to think about, in this new role, what's different. Well, the things that she might do an away day once a year to think about the future, along with a team, as part of a team. She's now expected to orchestrate something like that, or think about how might the organization look, or respond to its markets post pandemic, when everything, or lots of things, seem to have changed. So just giving people that simple structure can help them focus on um, the important things, and not just the urgent things. They require different attention. Different roles require a different mix. So someone stepping up to a director role needs to be thinking more often about the longer term, about the strategic issues, than just the day-to-day operational ones. And if they don't allocate time to that, the mix of time doesn't change for them as they step into that more senior role. Then life becomes majorly challenging. So using that four box matrix helps them kind of understand, but also leads us into, so what's holding you back from that? And that often is into logosynthesis territory.
Yes.
Um, and it's about habits, it's about patterns, it's about how they were brought up, or how they were rewarded as kids. It's There's often a kind of a kind of perfection driver sitting in there too. You know, their standards are really, really high, so they need to do things perfectly. And suddenly they have a brief that's this wide rather than very narrow and maybe perfect in some degree, but you know, it's very different now. So it helps people to think about those kind of things and gives us a springboard for logosynthesis discussions. Yeah.
Yeah, because I use logosynthesis a lot, like even from a self-coaching perspective to kind of
Uh-huh.
notice, that busy. So when I met Willem, it was during a time that I was really busy in my life, both at home with young
Hmm.
kids and work and volunteering, because I had to
Hmm.
volunteer in everything my kids were involved in. And then
Hmm.
you usually had to lead that, right? So,
Yeah.
but it was, what are those patterns like? And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
couldn't get myself out of it because
Yeah.
of those underlying beliefs, right? Like
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
to do it,
Yeah.
and it wasn't so much of like somebody has to step up and do it, and
Uh-huh.
why shouldn't
Yeah.
it be me? And
I
those
can
two
do the 4
components.
a.m. milking.
We did 6:30, but yeah. So you start to think, yeah, I can do everything. I can do anything, but I can't do everything. But
Hmm.
again, it was kind of noticing what I was reacting to. So the more you took
Hmm.
on, then all of a sudden you started to get a little bit of tone in your voice, or you started rushing through things. And so I
Yeah.
noticed that and used that as information to kind of get at those underlying triggers.
Yeah.
And then as you did it layer by layer or slice of the salami,
Uh-huh.
then over a bit of time you start to notice, hey, things are really shifting, because once you resolve the trigger, that issue
Mm.
kind of goes away, and like you said, other
Hmm.
things do come up. But you can get to a new place as opposed to be kind of caught in that trap of go, go,
Hmm.
go all the time. So,
Hmm.
and another piece, I had done, a little bit of research when I was starting to get into the logosynthesis. Just, everybody's stressed, and everybody's,
Hmm.
got some anxiety going on and things like that. What do we do about it? And the other piece is, how did my level compare to everyone else, right? And so if you're seeing
Uh-huh.
everything that has to be done out there, and other people are like, well, yeah, that's not my, not everybody has a belief that it's their issue to
Sure.
fix, kind of
Sure.
thing. And so it's recognizing that we're all in a different spot as well, right?
Uh-huh.
That we're not
Uh-huh.
all in that
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
spot. And I think that's
Yeah.
what you alluded to, even with doing your personal work. When you kind of get to know yourself better, then it brings a new dimension to working with
Hmm.
or supporting other people.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, one thing that shifted for me, uh, because of who I am and my kind of training and you know, career history and so on, is very much I need to make an impact. I need to make things happen. You know, so I suppose in my early days in coaching, I was trying to lead people in a way that I thought would work and you know would be the right thing to do. And I gradually kind of relaxed that, but I think logosynthesis has relaxed that even more. So um, yeah, less pressure for me to make them do something. You know, I mean that could never have been valid, but you know what I'm saying. If having an impact on change, on people, on events, and so on is important for you as a value, as a belief, then you know it's hard to control that and kind of just dial that down a little bit. Yeah.
Well, and it's so much about what our society values, right? And so you look at
Oh,
all the
sure,
books out there for leadership
sure.
development and all the advice. And I think that's what I love so much about logosynthesis. It's not about offering advice, it's about being there with the person and
Yeah,
listening to what their issue is, and then
yeah.
gently guiding them through to resolve those underlying blocks and triggers so
Uh-huh,
that they can
uh-huh.
resolve it. And really, that is the essence of coaching, right? Willem always
Mm,
says we're a couple steps behind, as opposed to kind of
yeah,
leading them. We're not pulling them forward the way we want them to go. It's
yeah.
listening to where they are at, because they know what they have to do. It's just to
Mhm,
get those
mhm.
blocks out of the way and get unstuck. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah. I think there can be expectations from the clients who are sourcing coaches or coaching for people that they want to see an outcome, a tangible outcome. There was a phase a few years back where people were looking to demonstrate some sort of return on investment for the money that was put into coaching. And I had one or two interesting conversations with people, because I mean that's just a total illusion that somehow we can pin, a financial number on the work we do in coaching. The world is far too complex. We're not running a scientific experiment where we change one thing, we add coaching, and we can say, so the coaching, caused that. It's like, well,
It's a little
there's
bit
a whole
about the
world out
sales and
there.
marketing
Yeah.
dilemma, right? I worked in sales and marketing,
Yeah,
and it was always the dilemma: can you measure the
yeah,
return on
yeah,
your
yeah,
marketing investment? But yeah, the same
absolutely.
thing on coaching, right? And yet, when you look at all the studies as far as what the biggest concern of leaders is, a lot of it revolves around talent retention, culture, employee
Mm,
engagement, and all those things that can be a little difficult to measure, right? That
yeah, yeah,
they're human potential. So,
uh-huh.
but and again, it's so exciting when you can see people tap into their potential, right? When working with
Mm,
logosynthesis, and you're guiding people through, and all of a sudden that block is gone, that underlying trigger is resolved, and they're like,
mm,
that no longer bothers me, that no longer holds me back. And it could be something, these things that are instilled as programming early on in our life, and they're with us for so long, and to see that
mm-hmm,
resolved or dissolved and it's no longer there, then it's very interesting to see people's response. And even for myself, it's huge. Like, it's subtle things, because we're talking about energetic shifts, but it's subtle, but it is so powerful to not be
mm-hmm,
controlled by
mm-hmm,
these beliefs and memories and that. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
So, what message would you have to leaders as far as, kind of inquiring into looking at logosynthesis?
um, I was thinking about that, and I'm not sure there's a single message. Um, I think there's an important. I mean, there's some research that the likes of the stuff that Gallup did, 2 decades ago or more, showing that taking an interest in people's development is the um, one of the key foundations for an organization that performs at an outstanding level. So some people respond to that. You should develop your people because that will give you benefits. It will help with retention. It will equip your people for the next function, the next job they go to, the next project they run, or whatever. I haven't found myself selling logosynthesis cold. So I mean, I've been coaching for quite a long time, and I tend to have a bank of clients who I work with who come back to me, and they know the kind of stuff that I can do. And if if I say I have an interesting process which might apply to some of your newly appointed senior guys, or your talent group, or people that seem to be constrained by something, you can't quite get to the bottom of that, um, and offer a kind of solution in that sense without saying it's logosynthesis or what it is. Um, so I guess my message would be a general one about, you need to develop your people. You need to develop yourself, because if you don't, you'll quickly be out of date. Imagine you didn't update your software on your phone or your laptop for 5 or 6 years. How out of date would you be?
3 months.
And
Yeah.
and they go, yeah, get that. So I think it's different hooks for different people in terms of that. But And some people are not ready and don't want to think about developing their people. They think, oh, why should I develop them? They'll just leave and so on. And I don't feel it's my mission to convert them.
Right.
So I guess my message would be to the converted. You need to
Yeah.
develop your people. Here's another way that you can look at that. And
Yeah.
people are becoming more sophisticated about coaching. Coaching I think it's evolving into something that's a powerful development approach because it's personalized. You're not part of a group of 30 or 50 hoping to absorb something useful. It's focused on you and your issues and how you move forward, whatever that means for you. And I think as that's growing, people are alert to there can be different approaches to that. There are different kinds of coach. And I never talk about life coaching, but I do talk about dealing with the whole person, not just the. So if people come and say, we want you just to deal with this business slice, and kind of fix that, we have a conversation which usually arrives at actually there's a person and a situation and a context that sits around this business slice, and we need to deal with all of that. And they kind of get that. So that's how it works. It works best for me.
Yeah.
I
Awesome.
think I do struggle a little bit to explain logosynthesis and what it's really about in a kind of coaching context where I've no connection with the people. And I'll use you get that experience, something triggers a memory or a reaction and you're back feeling those things and it's distressing. People kind of understand that, but some people are ready to talk about energy. Not many people in Scotland are ready to talk about essence. That's a step too far. I have tried that, and one guy said to me, "It sounds like an aftershave, some sort of cologne or something." He did.
Yeah,
He did come
and I
round.
think that's I think that's everywhere that our language is, and a little bit is kind of driven by what's out there in books and
Sure,
in
sure.
media and things along that line. And so a piece of it is this is still very new work, and
Mm,
logosynthesis as a comprehensive model has been built based on Willem's been a psychotherapist, psychologist for a
mm,
long time and has trained in
yeah.
many methods, including energy psychology, and
Hmm.
start to build something or develop something that is new to us. So a piece of it for
Yes.
all of us is how do
Yes.
we explore that language that it resonates with the people
Mm,
that we
mm,
support. Yeah.
hmm. I
Because
mean, sometimes.
especially for me, I know when I first started talking about it in the corporate world, right, and with all my coworkers and that, but what they did notice was that, they'd say, "Oh, there, Cathy got triggered again." And it's like, okay, so now I know what I can go and work
Okay.
on.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
noticed that it got better, and
Uh-huh.
so that
Uh-huh.
was quite interesting, and then, of
Ah.
course, I experimented with a lot of them, and it's interesting to see, yes, notice what
Yeah.
triggers you, resolve it,
Yes.
and it gets better, and to me, that's if we could all just commit to that piece,
Mm,
our workplaces and our home life could be more peaceful and calm, right? And productive and
absolutely.
creative.
Yes,
So,
yes.
yeah.
And that short experience of which is often the way I introduce it. Should we just try it? And invariably
Mhm.
people say yes, with more enthusiasm than others in some case. But and so we do that for 5 or 10 minutes, and uh, I mean, a number of things happen. They feel different. They feel less stressed. Um, their facial expressions, can
Mhm.
change, and they can lose 10 years. Maybe there should be a marketing ploy. But you can see often a younger face, and it can be, even in a short space of time, quite profound for people. And I think if they have that experience, then they often will come back and say, "Could we do some more of that?" Because that really made a difference. That's not bothering me anymore, but this is, and there's
Yeah.
something else come up.
Yeah. And the thing I always liked is when I started to talk about it, it was, people would say, "Oh, yes, I know exactly who could benefit from that, like my wife or my husband." But it was never themselves, right?
Sure,
But
sure,
it was the
sure.
person. So it's good. Yeah.
It's a
And I
start.
guess, one of the things I always think for leaders is to be so careful of your response to it because it is helping so many people who have had, maybe much more traumatic experiences than
Mm,
yourself. And
mhm.
they look to you as a leader for cues. It's not necessarily an outright endorsement, but they look
Sure.
at facial expressions, they look at your reaction to it. And
Mm,
so I just encourage people to be curious and to learn about it. And, I think as humans, we all benefit from appreciating this work, but also as leaders, it's one thing to do our own personal development work, but also recognize the influence and impact we have to other people that can
sure,
benefit from it.
sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm. Well,
Mm.
thanks so much, Steve. I certainly appreciate your perspective and your
You're welcome.
expertise in using
Lovely to chat with you
logosynthesis.
today.
Yeah.